session. Dario, thank you for joining us today. Could you please provide a small presentation on the state of fintech, approaching possibly the geographical distribution of the main startups, potential players in payments, and description of VC activity?
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Thank you guys for bringing me in. It's a pleasure. It's also a pleasure to see that there are more geographies involved in this effort to bring more attention to the continent and to new regions. So by myself, obviously, I'll be here to discuss some of the trends that have been going on in the fintech space. I did prepare a few slides. It's very much a summary of the work that has been done by Briter in fintech, especially because we've been involved in a number of studies recently on the distribution of funding. But also, we've had the pleasure in the past to work with organizations across Lusophone countries in Africa. As a matter of fact, Angola was one of our first clients, a couple of clients in Angola a couple of years ago. So we always hold this this region dear. And so I'll be sharing my screen, but I think you guys need to enable me to actually present.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that.
Sure. So what I'm going to go through is the distribution of products across the fintech space, and then some of the trends in the in the investment landscape, especially because of the increasing role that financial technology has been playing in the last few years, especially when it comes to skewing the data and really determining the composition of capital distribution across Africa. So let me share. Thanks, Raquel. Can you?
Yeah, I think you can share the screen now.
Cool. Awesome. Can you see? Yeah. Fantastic. So to start with, when we talk about fintech, we talk about quite a number of products, and so we're not really limited to the realm of payments or investment, but there is very much a whole ecosystem of players that concur to the creation of a healthy and thriving ecosystem when it comes to financial technology. So we're talking about the whole identity and credit scoring landscape. So companies that allow consumer and corporates to provide proof about their ability, for instance, to repay loans or to be accountable for, or to effectively show that their business activity is legitimate and isn't illegal or any sort. But there's also the whole accounting and HR tech space that could be categorized as financial technology because effectively it deals with the financial side. So we could probably say that there's a transactional side to fintech, and there's more of there is a management side to fintech, and there's also a digital identity side to fintech and regulatory side to the sector. So this Hive, which we produced early on last year, takes a look at the companies that have been raising funding over the past few years. It also shows the geographical distribution. What we've observed over the past few years is that obviously there's let's say the African regions are divided in tiers, in the sense that we have a number of countries such as Kenya, South Africa, Egypt, and Nigeria that are spearheading the ecosystem in the region when it comes to number of investments, when it comes to number of companies active in the space, when it comes to the volume of funding and the degree of and the size, let's say, of corporate and investor that they attract. Then there's the second tier, which could probably account for Ghana, Tanzania, Uganda, Tunisia, Morocco, right? And then there's an let's say a third tier, or probably those ecosystems that at Briter we call nascent, that include also many countries across Francophone Africa, many countries across Lusophone Africa and Central Africa. So this, I don't want to delve too much into this. All of these are actually freely available online. So I do recommend, if there's an interest in this, to take a look at what the distribution is. But the main point here and the main message is that financial technology from a product perspective is not just limited to the transactional side of it, so the payment and the transfer, but also the management, also the currency exchange, also the management side, and the insurance and identity. This is a chart that I extracted from the latest report that we built, and it looks at what, before we looked at the product taxonomy, now we look at what products are attractive funding across Africa, but also across emerging markets, such as Latin American countries and India. So payment companies, both B2B and B2C, are the companies that have attracted the bulk of funding across all region. And so by B2B and B2C and C2C, what we mean is flatter wave type of companies, so companies that provide merchant services and payment gateways for especially business to business or business to consumer transaction. Then followed by credit, and within credit, we basically bundled microfinance loans, peer-to-peer loans, and so on. And then what we can see here is Neobank. I know that among the speakers we have an Angolan neobank, and neobanking has been one of the fastest growing products across all countries and across all regions. And the reason for this is the population across this country is because the populations across all these regions are either largely underbanked, meaning the banking services and the banking products are very limited across all regions, or unbanked, meaning there's large shares of the population that actually do not even have a formal bank account because of a number of reasons, such as the lack of credit scoring, or the lack of collateral, or the lack of simply ability for the bank to tap into consumer that might have sort of less, let's call it accountability checks, right? But at the same time, it's not just because of this, but it's also because consumers across the world are showing an interest in taking control over their financings without necessarily having to deal with intermediaries, right? And so neobanks are allowing consumers to have their financing in their hand and being able to transact and share money with friends and family and colleagues without the need to really having to justify or having to go through third parties. So as you can see here, like neobanking has been the third most funded subsector. And then here we can see a spike in India, but in the insurance and insurtech space, but we cannot really say the same for Africa, or at least insurtech in Africa is seeing a large interest, especially thanks to the ability of having access to more data and more analytics and more digital identity and credit scoring type of services, which increase the accountability and trackability of the consumers. But we haven't seen the same amount of funding going into the sector. This is a infographic that is taken from our end of the year report the Briter has produced that's released in January. And as you can see here, aside from energy, which deserves a whole comment on its own, what we are seeing is that obviously pay-as-you-go solutions, so payment solution, transfers, financial API, and insurance and digital banking are these subsectors that have seen over the past few years the largest interest from investors, right? So here, the other side of the story that I wanted to discuss about is the presence of large deals, what we call as mega deals, of around 100 or above, that tend to skew the size of the sort of the totals and the volumes and the figures when people talk about funding in Africa. As you can see here, virtually all companies that in 2019 and 2020 have been raising outlier types of funding, the ones that have the logo in there, are financial technology companies or e-commerce companies that effectively are powered by financial technology types of solutions and products. And as you can see here, just a very limited number of companies, 5 to 10 companies have the ability to more than double the total funding. And this is something that needs to be accounted for when discussing the volumes and the composition of funding across the continent, because obviously this tends to, I guess, skew the narrative and skew the perception of what the activity actually is. But in truth, you can see that most of the companies, especially early stage funding, there's another new hacking victim. Oh, I think someone is unmuted. I thought you were talking to me. Okay, so at the end of the day, what you can see is that most of the companies in the early stages are left to basically battle for a much limited amount of funding. And here is something that we have been producing very much. This is not actually even been released. We were planning to release it today, following what I was discussing about just now. The fact that
I'm sorry, Dario, we've been having some issues. Let me
unmute yourself, Dario, please.
Yeah. We can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, continue.
Sorry.
I didn't mute myself. Was it automatic?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know.
Okay.
We don't know. Yeah, sorry.
When did you lose me? When did you lose me?
At the beginning of this last slide.
The one, the unicorn slide?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Cool. Can you wait? Can you still see the slide?
Now you're not sharing. Now you are, but it's not really okay.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah. Now it's perfect.
Superb. Okay. So what I was saying is that, and this is very much the last slide because I know I have 10 minutes. Most of the companies, very much all the companies that have reached unicorn stages that have attracted international investors, such as Tiger Global, Visa, are companies that play in the financial technology space. And what we've seen is that there are a number of young companies that have been reaching now unicorn stages and that are basically all playing in the payment space, right? As I showed you 2 minutes ago in the cross-regional product mapping, what we're seeing is that the payment space is the one that is attracting the highest number of investors and the highest amount of capital, and is also seeing companies breaching, the kind of unicorn stages. I could go on and on, but I wonder whether there are any questions or we should leave questions at the end.
I don't know if anyone has any questions. You can put on the chat, but if not, then we can move on to the startups panel. Gonçalo, if you can share the screen. Thank you. So we are having 4 fintechs, PagaLu, Ecotiva, iMali, Kudi, and unfortunately Sergio won't be joining us. So I would like to give you the stage for each of you, Fei, Jaime, João, and Maomar, to present yourselves within 30 seconds. And yeah, the stage is yours. Fei, you can start. We can move on.
Okay. Hi. Hi. Thank you, Raquel. My name is Fei Manheche. I'm the co-founder of PagaLu, which is a payment aggregator based in Mozambique, and we want to facilitate payments between various payment methods available in the market. And we're currently focusing on e-commerce businesses and trying to simplify a huge pain that they have of starting to receive payments and make payments online. That's me, and that's in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you. Jaime?
Hi everyone, thanks for the opportunity. My name is Jaime Chizavane. I'm the co-founder of Ecotiva, the owner of the product Quickie Pay, which a service payment aggregator also that will the main aim is to facilitate payments using mobile wallets as the main method to perform payments for e-commerce and to pay services also online.
Thank you, Jaime. João?
Hello, everybody. My name is João Gaspar. I'm the founder of Paytec, the company that developed the iMali service. iMali is a digital payment account, but we hope to evolve in the next years to be a digital bank, the first digital bank in Mozambique. So we have both sides of the solutions. We have the mobile app for the end user, and also the apps and applications for the merchants. And our service is based on QR code payment. Thank you.
Thank you, João. And lastly, Maomar.
Hi everyone, my name is Maomar. I'm the co-founder of Kudi in Guinea-Bissau. We started as an instrument to facilitate transactions, but we are evolving, and in the future we want to be the first digital bank in Guinea-Bissau. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. So to begin our discussion, I have a question to Fei. Fei, PagaLu wants to leverage interoperability between bank accounts and mobile money. How do you see the evolution of these two realities?
Thank you for the question, Raquel. I think in general, there's a convergence occurring even now. Mobile wallet accounts are starting to now have interactions and enabling transactions between bank accounts and mobile wallets. Although the major constraint there is the higher fees that these mobile wallet providers charge for these cash out or transfers between different mobile accounts. And this does, in a way, place a huge barrier, in a way, for people to try to use or transact outside their mobile wallets. It is obviously within their business model to operate in such a way, because then that enables them to grow their wallets and have all transactions occurring inside. But then it does, in a way, also restrict the market in how it can innovate and even develop in providing solutions that are inclusive of other payment methods that may be most suitable for certain markets or environments. And that's where I think, in a way, companies and other fintechs such as ourselves are trying to bridge this barrier of enabling payments between mobile wallet accounts, and especially considering lower fees or at least more accessible fees. It enables them to ensure that the market is a bit more fair, because even the regulators, in a way, I think they're overlooking this huge aspect, enabling only bilateral agreements between banks and mobile wallet providers. And in a way, with a startup such as ourselves, we're basically trying to be more impartial in enabling everyone to transact in a more feasible manner. So the future seems that it's going to happen. It's starting to happen. The market's already accepting payments in such ways, but the cost is not fair to the consumer as well. Over.
Thank you, Fei. And as a follow-up question to João, interoperability will have a positive impact on financial inclusion, but how do you think iMali will speed up financial inclusion in Mozambique?
Well, first of all, let's talk about, thank you for the question, Raquel. And interoperability in the country it's something that we are pushing for a long time. And iMali it will be one of the fintechs that will use that interoperability when it is available. But let me tell you one thing. Mozambique has roughly 20 million people in terms of inhabitants, and only half of them are considered adult people who having a bank account or a mobile money account. So we have roughly 4 million bank accounts and 5 million mobile wallet accounts. And it's not fair to say that we can add the two numbers, because most of the people that has mobile money accounts have also bank accounts. So we can foresee and we can estimate that roughly 10 million people in this country are unbanked or underbanked. And that are the guys that we are trying to address with iMali, the underbanked people. Because when we're talking about financial inclusion, we can talk about how to bring people to have a bank account or a mobile wallet account or a payment account, as we are. And also we can talk about how can we make people to know more about financial products. But important for us is how to make people to change their mind in terms of using cash payment and use it in digital way. So that's our focus. That is using digital way of payments, and so that's what we are doing. We are digitizing all the use cases that we can foresee to implement a easy way to payment between end users and merchants, and end user and government. So those are the targets that we are looking for. And for that, the interoperability between all the accounts existing in the country. We are talking about bank accounts, mobile money accounts, other fintech accounts. That interoperability must be present in order for everybody can use a system like our system, iMali or others, and be very easy to make the payments and to make all the digital accounts, digital payments that they need on a daily basis. Let me tell also one thing. We developed three models inside of iMali. One is for the end user. It's an app that you can use and you can do all the service that you can do on a daily basis. But also we have a model that substitutes the traditional POS on the merchant side, so the merchant can use a mobile phone to act as a POS, so without any costs, and with the service merchant commission fee very low, lower than the bank account. And also we have a third element that touch that area of interoperability, because since the beginning we have an open API, and everybody that has a business or that has a vertical solution in the country, even not a financial solution, can interact with us and can use our ecosystem of payment inside their systems. That's for now, and I'm happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, João. And I know that you've recently launched iMali in Mozambique, and it's going very well. So congratulations for that as well. And
yes, thank you.
Moving on to Jaime. Jaime, you are entering a highly regulated market. What do you consider the main challenges to the growth of QuickPay?
Hi, thanks for the question. Going to the first part of the question, a high regulated market, I would say that at the moment things are getting better in terms of regulatory affairs for fintechs in Mozambique, because at least now we have a space where fintechs can launch and can demo the solutions while the central bank is monitoring. And this is a very good and positive initiative for the fintechs that want to launch a different market, a different solution to the market. But also I would maybe rephrase my statement saying that if we maybe change the way that we are making, that we are regulating the fintechs in Mozambique specifically, as the way as other countries are doing, we are currently doing a reactive regulation in terms of what it's joining into the market. We want to see first, to see exactly what is the reaction. Maybe if we try to change to a proactive regulation, that could be also a very good a hint to accelerate the developing of some solutions that are operating not only on fintech, but I would say that we cover also other points of the market. Because fintech is something that by default we can't just regulate. It's a new solution. We need just to start the behavior, evaluate the risks, and maybe try to try to implement a regulation on the top of the results after a certain analysis. But fortunately, things are getting better in Mozambique, and we still have a lot of challenges to cover, not only for Quickie Pay, but for the other regulation, the other fintechs that we have in the market. The main challenge to grow currently to Quickie Pay, I believe that will not only be for Quickie Pay, would be also to other fintechs in Mozambique, including PagaLu and iMali, is the ecosystem. We have a very huge challenge in the ecosystem to implement payments. We have today a lot of solutions that demand, or we can foresee opportunity to integrate payments online, but to enable the ecosystem, we need also to head inside to that ecosystem people to use that solutions that we are having. We need to get the end user familiarized with what exactly we are tend to implement into the market. And for that, we raise other challenges such as connectivity, such as user literacy, how far the solutions are being good enough to our target population. How do we intend to penetrate to our target population, and how we would like to make this suitable to our end user? What are the challenges that we are having? Are our solutions being only to the urban areas? How can we make sure that we can also take our solutions integrated with the ecosystem that we have currently in Mozambique to the rural areas also? Because this is one of the main intentions that we would like to implement to the market, which is financial inclusion to the ones that, as Jeong mentioned before, that for the people that doesn't have any banking account, or only they are underbanked people that we need to cover also from that side. This is one of the first challenges that I would like to put on the table. And at this point in time, I would maybe say that this is the main key, to have people using as digital services, so then we can integrate in our solutions in between. This is a pure example only for Quickie Pay, because we intend to have an open API that we will integrate in our merchant customers that will accept payment using our channels. So if we don't have a strong ecosystem that will invite people to use these solutions, definitely our solution will also not be very successful, because people not only integrate payments, they will need to integrate payments to pay something, to buy or to pay any services, or to pay or to pay a good. So this is the main challenge, and the regulatory is getting better, as I told before, but we still have a lot of challenges to improve. And also the level of business. I will not say the level, but I would say the business model that we are currently using, it demands a certain kind of funding to make this business to survive for the next year. So I will say that also funding is one of the key challenges that we need also to overcome to resist and survive in the market. That all that I would like to contribute, and I'm happy to answer to any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaime. But I think that overall it's great that things are getting better in terms of regulation, because it's definitely an enable for much more better things to come and for the growth of the economy. And lastly, Maomar, you want to go beyond national payments and target international transfers. How do you see fintechs speeding up the evolution of international payments in Africa?
Well, thank you for the question. I'm going to give you an example, for example, of Guinea-Bissau. We are a country of 1.8 million inhabitants. We know that in 2019, there were 77 million euros in international transactions. I'm talking transactions with operators like Western Union, RIA, Wari, and we also know that last year that amount grew to 115 millions. We know that those operators I just mentioned, they do not cover the whole country. People from the countryside, they're forced to travel and to come to the big cities in order to have their money. So that's where fintechs can move in and help bring those services to them, to the countryside, as we call it here, to the tabancas. And that would be a huge help in their lives. So I think that I need to refer also that the black market, for example, is as strong as the regulated market, and that's very dangerous. So we need to bring those regulated transactions to somehow a regulated mean of transactions. So I think that fintech can help a lot in doing that. I also think that there is a need for partnerships, to create partnerships within the fintech community all over the world. And when I say that, I mean for us, for example, it's very important to create partnerships with fintechs from Europe, for example, because it's where our most of our immigrants are based, and to enable that kind of transactions. You see, so answering your questions, I see that fintechs can really help speeding up the evolution in international transactions, but we need to partner with each other. We need to connect. We need to create that kind of interoperability, and with that, we can help our populations. We can help them have access to cheaper and meaningful financial services. I think I answered your question.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Maomar. We still have some time left before we end our startups panel. Is there anyone from the startups, the VC panel, Esselina or Dario, that would like to make a question?
Where do you see the biggest challenge on acquiring traction? Wait, sorry, Esselina, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a question that maybe is not directed to the fintech directly, but maybe for all of us that we are here. And my question is, all of us, we are talking about data and we are talking about the open API to be one of the instrument or one of the channel that might allow more fintechs to be playing their role in the industry. I just want to know, how do you think that it should be the journey in order to have that space fully open so that everyone is participating? I would appreciate if people from other countries also share with us how was this process of opening the API to newcomer like fintechs. Thank you.
Thank you, Esselina. Is there anyone? I don't recall if it was a directed question for a specific startup, because I don't know if. Yeah,
maybe I could address it if so. This open banking underpinned by this open API is a trend that you see quite globally. It started in Europe, in the UK, and parts of Asia, but I think it's now quite in Brazil's open with open banking. What we have to understand is with open APIs and open banking, it opens up the financial system to non-financial services players. And players such as e-commerce players like Jumia or whoever. And why this is important is because if you look at the banking system, a lot of the infrastructure that the banks build on, or even some of the fintechs build on, are quite outdated, and therefore the legacy system, the user is paying for that, right? And then they have to make money somehow, so they're charging the users. But if you look at an e-commerce company or a mobility company, they have a totally different cost structure. And they can provide what you call the on-ramp and off-ramp to cash because they have a lower cost structure. Their main business is not that. But with an open API, they can behave very much like a bank, or they don't have the deposit capability, but they can provide transaction capability or money transfer capability. And so therefore, you're opening up a huge universe of other partners in financial service that could materially lower the cost structure for the system. And therefore, the user, who is a person in, I don't know, could be in Mozambique, a farmer, didn't have to take on the cost of legacy infrastructure of a bank, right? And also, there are issues. One of the bigger issues also in credit, for example, is that the cost of borrowing is very high for a lot of people, especially in Africa, and that's because there's no information around these people. There's no credit agency, etc. But with open API and these different third-party companies gathering transaction data about that person, you can enable better information, which means you can reduce the cost of lending because you can calibrate the risk profile of that individual, for example. So these are some of the implications for open banking and open API. Some of the governments also use this to increase competition, to bring in other competitors, including fintech, to compete with the banks because they're just working off their legacy positions.
Thank you, Jean. I think that answered the question. I wanted to say a question from the audience. Anup Singhal asks, how do you manage the digital payments where the people do not have trust in the banking system? I think this is an open question for anyone that wants to answer it.
Maybe I could probably give it a go. So in a sense, taking into consideration the Mozambican context specifically, some people don't have access or even trust on banks, but they are quite comfortable in using mobile wallets as a payment method. And in a way, what's usually done is provide them with access to these services, which is easier for people to sign up in a way to mobile wallet services. And they already start obtaining some trust in their financial system. And then other services are added on top of that. And that's why even the mobile wallet service providers are now also enabling transactions between other, even to pay bills and even allowing them to cash out at ATM. So a whole plethora of services are being added as value-added services to this. So in a way, in my opinion, yes, they allowing people to enter the digital payment system with mobile wallets would then also open up for them to eventually go into the banking and other financial services that may be available over.
Thank you, Fei. We can save the KYC question to the end to have time to discuss the VC panel. So I'll be passing the word to João Gaspar, also a member of the board of Portugal Fintech Association. Thank you, João.
Hello. It's a great pleasure. Thanks a lot for the invitation, and thanks a lot for having all these great speakers. We got a very, very interesting VC panel, and that's what we want to learn and get a little bit more information today. Thanks for all the entrepreneurs sharing their companies before. I think super interesting startups. And, you know, like myself, like I've been investing in fintech. I lived in Mozambique, in Ilha de Mozambique for a while. I know it's a great entrepreneurial country, lots of small merchants everywhere. What's happening with the tech scene? Why is it so difficult to create tech scenes around Africa? And that's pretty much what I would like to discuss with the panelists. In the panel, we got Matteo, Lelemba, Jeong, and I will first ask you for a 30 seconds intro, like on yourself, your fund, your investment thesis, whatever you think it's useful for the audience to know a little bit more about you before we start. So maybe we could start with Matteo, then Lelemba, then Jeong, please.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for having me here. My name is Matteo Rizzi. My experience is really like just about in financial services for the past 20 years. I worked for Swift. I co-founded InnoTribe back in 2009, basically witnessing with our first startup challenge the rise of the big fintechs in Europe, including the TransferWise and the Revolut of the situation. And I became an investor in 2013. Started to invest in Africa with Omidyar for a couple of years in 2015, and right now with Bamboo Capital Partners. I'm taking so many shortcuts, but whatever, Google me. And now Bamboo Capital Partners has a early stage and Series A fund that is a tech for good impact investment vehicle. We invest from $500,000 to $5 million. We are about to launch the first investment in Ivory Coast, and our fund is in partnership with Smart Africa, which is one of the largest African organizations, of which Mozambique is part of, to digitize Africa. That's about it.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lelemba. Thanks for having me here. I'm the operating partner for Enigma Ventures. We are a VC fund that focuses on investing in women entrepreneurs in the SADC region. I have a varied background. I've worked in government, I've worked in large corporate, and I was part of a team that grew a fintech from 1 country to 5 countries in the SADC region. And so this is an exciting space for me. Because I've walked both that entrepreneur journey and now I'm on the investor side. So thanks for having me on the call.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeong. I'm head of venture investing for Apis Partners. It's a venture capital and private equity firm based out of London, focusing on financial services. I work with institutions, corporates, and other institutions to form dedicated VC investments in financial service and adjacencies, and also with ESG focus. We invest globally, typically in Series B and above, and we also have a private equity firm that does growth capital. One of the exciting things about technology is that the costs keep coming down, so ability to address lower income countries is becoming very exciting. And we take our learnings from other regions in Asia or in Latin America, and we also transfer some of these business models into Africa.
So we get a great panel, lots of know-how accumulated here. So let's jump into a little bit deeper questions. I would invite Matteo to speak a little bit. Matteo, we'd like to know what you think still are the barriers or limitations that don't turn these, let's say, markets that Dario considered nascent markets inside the Africa landscape as an attractive geography for VCs. So what do you think are the bottlenecks here? What's your vision, Matteo?
The experience so far, it's of course a mix of things. It's difficult to point a finger into something, but I would say you mentioned the entrepreneurial culture, okay, as a wide asset, for the African continent in general, but in being an entrepreneur and setting up a startup, there is a huge difference, so and I created something called timepledge.org that has which is a not-for-profit with the mission to start coaching and helping African entrepreneurs on soft skills. And I realized all of a sudden that whether we're talking about like a startup challenge or a presentation to a VC or a commercial presentation or simply like a 3-minute speech to anybody in any context, entrepreneurs are just not prepared. And maybe because they're not equipped a little bit, maybe because they don't do enough homework, but also because there is not enough ecosystem around them to push, an entrepreneurs per se, and giving this person the tools to position herself into a context that is actually prone to get capital. Point number one. Point number two, most of the VCs, they goes where the big noise is, so the usual suspects, the Poles, the Nigerias, the Kenyas, the Egypt, and because I'm learning now on the ground, because Smart Africa is actually way broader. We started noticing that Francophone Africa is catching up, and Lusophone Africa, I would hope it would be next in line. Now that leads me to the third sort of point of observation, and then I will stop here because I would love to get the point of views of my fellow panelists. Is that if you are actually dealing with this vertical, you might be too small to be attractive for a VC, right? So therefore, you need to become either a super app to take a to take a shortcut, but certainly a conglomerate of fintech services or even like an embedded finance sort of startups to be able to cross-sell. So payments is going to be the last mile. And then before that, you might come across a startup that mix up mobility with leasing, with digitizing salaries, and the reason why VCs are not attracted or just not yet is because many startups are dealing with a single service, and that single service might not bring the scale necessary, for a VC like return.
Thanks a lot, Matteo. Great points. I jump into Lelemba, you are an experienced investor, but also you combine an extensive experience in the mobile money sector, specifically with Zona. You scaled in many countries, including Mozambique. You guys were part of the sandbox a couple of years ago. Yeah. What do you think are critical factors, not only to grow, but to become interesting to VCs?
Yeah. I think I'll speak to a lot of what Matteo has said, and more coming from that startup side. Sometimes the markets in which we're operating are just too small to be attractive to VC. We have to keep into consideration that VCs are businesses too, and they only make their money if they can exit a startup. But these startups have to be attractive enough to the next level of investor who can come and take this business off an early stage VC, for example. But if the market is too small and the bigger VCs are not seeing the potential for this business to scale, it really becomes difficult for them to really be interested in investing. And so sometimes number one is the fact that our markets are too small. And this can be because of our product range being a single product, like Matteo said, or by just the number of people that are in the market. Number two is a lot of the regulatory differences that exist between our countries. I think that for regions such as Sub-Saharan Africa, particularly SADC, I would say each of our markets, apart from South Africa, in isolation, are usually deemed too small. And a fintech will look a lot more attractive if it has got potential to scale across a number of markets. This is to put together, economies of scale, but also to widen the reach in terms of a user base and use cases for the product as well. This could expand the use cases for a product as well. But the regulations differ so much that expanding from one country to another is, capital intensive. It is time expensive. And there's so much to consider when thinking about which market to get into that you really prevents most fintechs from really scaling to the point where they're really attractive, particularly to the bigger, growth stage VCs. And so when we're thinking about regional blocks, I think it's necessary to look both at the macro issues, which are around our regulation and our political landscape, and also more at the micro issues, which is around ecosystem support. Because like Matteo said, sometimes it's not even a language barrier like English versus Portuguese. It's just the language barrier of not knowing what an investor wants to look at when you're presenting your business. And this is where other ecosystem players, such as accelerators, business networks are super, super important in helping bridging that gap. Yeah.
Thanks, Lelemba. Very important topics. You invest also a lot in women. Any specific advice for women entrepreneurs in the fintech landscape?
Yeah, just keep applying. Honestly, I think that what we've found is that there's a lot of hesitation for women entrepreneurs to even just put the foot in front of another to just get in front of investors. And so for us, our investment thesis from the get-go was always about only going to invest in women entrepreneurs or businesses that have a woman founder. This is to at least lower that first barrier of women feeling like I probably won't have a chance because there's going to be so much competition. And so first piece of advice is just apply, because through an application process, you learn so much about what investors are looking for. And note that there are a lot of gender lens funds that are coming up that are interested in investing in women's businesses. And so sometimes even when you don't fit the criteria or the bill for one investor, the networks are so tight knit that it's possible for them to pass you on to the next or to the next or to the next. And so I'm super excited about this space. In 2020, we invested in 10 businesses. Our top 2 performing ones are fintechs run by women. And so it is definitely an exciting space. That's why money is flowing to fintech. Dario's presentation just showed us how much investment is going into fintech compared to other industries. And so if you are in a fintech space and you're a woman, I think it actually gives you an advantage because you are then even better positioned to attract investment, because you're at the nexus, at the middle intersection of gender and fintech. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Very important advice. Now I'm going to jump it, Jean. Jean, you mentioned very interesting things on your answer to Esselina. You spoke about adjacent markets that I think would enable fintech. You spoke about open banking, and you mentioned that you guys typically invest after Series B. So there's a lots of space before Series B. And what I would like to ask you, it's so Appies, your company is specialized in financial services and has supported several fintechs in Africa with investments. How do you perceive the evolution of these local solutions in smaller markets, and how can they thrive against larger players like South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, that we are seeing lots of money flying there? Is there a hope for these smaller countries?
I think based on what I've seen in different geographies, so financial service is a meta sector. It's basically payment feeds into all the verticals. That's why it's an important part. So if you look at history of tech stack, you start with mobile telephony and data, and then you have what you call payments. And then once you have that infrastructure, you get to have inflection point in other industries, right? So we are at an interesting junction in terms of how technology is evolving, because we have, in one hand, Africa has no legacy infrastructure that is deterring a lot of things, despite the regulation that Lelemba was talking about. But I would like to move a little further ahead and see what's happening with the internet and Web3 stack, where currently all the financial service transactions are running on what you call legacy infrastructure, be it Swift or whatever. I see in 5 years, it's already happening, but in 5 years, I expect to see what you call the public blockchain stack to be technologically be ready, to be able to actually move substantial value in payments and other things, to be able to actually even disrupt the existing fintechs in that sense, right? So the opportunity comes in either you improve on the current stack, either through infrastructure or distribution, which actually can scale across geographies, because if you're not, you're going to be regulated. And so you'll be very limited to one small geography. Or you actually even leapfrog that and look at the next tech stack in the Web3, where actually it is not constrained even further. It's actually global. And there's opportunity in terms of not only moving payments, but also there's new assets going to be built on this in digital assets and tokenized physical assets. And so, yeah, I mean, in terms of how things scale, you have to look at beyond the local, and I think that's to what Matteo was mentioning, the ecosystem in these smaller countries. There's not enough what you call critical knowledge, or in terms of insights, to be able to build these kind of global businesses. But it is possible because of what's happening with COVID, future of work, etc. People can access now globally and think more globally, or at least regionally within Africa, as long as you're not regulated. And if you're regulated, it will be a slower process, but there will be other modes.
Thanks a lot, Jean. I'll just ask you a quick clarification, and I'll finish with Matteo, which is the first one. So we're going to close the loop. But in Africa, I don't know if you have this perception or if data grounds what I'm saying, but we got kind of Africa in two, let's say, speeds. We got two speeds now. Imagine Guinea, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, even Ghana, South Africa, like it's getting the, let's say, world-leading types of VCs, rounds, unicorns. And then we got a little bit the rest of Africa, where Lusophone Africa, it's pretty included. Do you see this gap? Do you see it shortening, enlarging, or any hint for this gap to get narrow and narrow?
So think of it this way. What's happening with, for example, European countries versus US or China, that analogy can be replicated in Africa. But the companies that are in smaller countries that were able to scale globally, typically were plays that were actually in infrastructure, not regulated plays, right? Or they hit the distribution market, okay? And so there are type of businesses which are more scalable across the countries versus some other types of businesses. So to the extent that that is possible, yes. And I think when I said what is optimistic for the future is also when I mentioned the usage of data and how to share data either through blockchain or AI's mining, better ability to take intel from the data that is shared, is that the difference between the smaller and then the bigger companies or smaller or bigger countries, that information asymmetry is also going away, or it's not fully going away, but it's going to be much less, right? So that's very positive, and that's it's a secular trend that will continue, and that's why it's very exciting. And ability to post-COVID, you have people who are actually living more in the what you call virtual space, right? So if you're constrained by the visa or whatever, it's much harder. But if you're actually, I'm seeing African entrepreneurs work and like this gig economy within virtual games, that you can actually work in a game to create assets or whatever. That transcends the borders. So these are exciting opportunities that are actually scalable, and so it depends on what vertical, what business model you choose, really.
No, that's very motivating. Like I saw that in Portugal. Like once we get big companies, then we see people going away from the big companies, starting their small startups, and the momentum gets faster and faster. We saw the same in Berlin with 40,000 people working for Rocket and then starting sub ventures. So it's very very interesting what you said, Jim. Thanks a lot. I'll finish with Matteo and then open up for the next chapters. And Matteo, I'm going to bundle one question that I got to you, which is like what you expect to fintechs bring or achieve before presenting to Bamboo, some practical hints in the early cycle. But I'll also join a little bit the question from Maomar on the chat that basically asked if once you are analyzing a company, you just look at the country of the company, or you look that maybe they are serving let's call it a block of countries, imagine West Africa or SADC, or even a monetary union. So can you open a little bit the door for the entrepreneurs in the room, know a little bit better the process, when to pitch, what to pitch, and how you guys look at the companies?
Yeah, so actually understanding when is the right moment to raise how much capital for an early stage company is super critical, right? Once because it makes some startups uninvestable, when they raise too much for too much of equity too early, and also because in some cases you need to and I got a couple of examples. You need to, especially at the beginning of your journey, you need to bring capital that is more than just money. Otherwise, especially in Africa, if they don't understand the culture, they might pull off or want their money back too early, and then the investors that are coming in who are indeed willing and they are there for the long game. They need to spend some money to get out of some of the early stage investors, which is actually the case in a couple of startups that we have found. So this is the first, point of attention. Second, indeed, we look at the potential, and as Lelemba sort of back to what I was saying, sometimes it's not enough to have the greatest idea, but also the way this idea is going to expand either across multiple businesses in the same country, or across different countries with the same solution. But I'll give you an example. You say there are 2 speeds. There are 3 speeds, in my opinion, right now in Africa, because Francophone Africa actually is catching up pretty faster, I would say. And there is actually a good example. There are a couple of, not more than one actually, mobility companies in these countries that started as a mobility company, and through COVID they become a transportation company because there was no more humans to move. There was mostly like food and services, and all of a sudden they realized that they could become as well a fintech companies by leasing the vehicles to the workers, and then all of a sudden getting into digital payments, which was in for several countries a big leap. Now, Francophone Africa is similar to Lusophone Africa in a sense that is a conglomerate. They're just geographically closer, right? But you get startups that with Mali and Gabon in Francophone Africa, they are perfectly profitable and thriving. They might not become unicorns, but they might give an excellent return to investors. I wanted to add something, which is something I came across recently, but by the end of the century, there will be 500 million people speaking Portuguese in the world. And most of them, and the shift will, the cursor will shift from Brazil to Africa. So most of these 500 million people will be in Africa. This is where I believe that common solutions for Lusophone Africa is a super exciting opportunity, especially if this banking without borders will become a reality. So I wanna live with this sort of looking at the future, and maybe super last, for the entrepreneurs that are besides doing a little bit of homework. But I think that another trend that sort of came up super strongly recently is that because of Flutterwave and Paystack, everyone is now thinking that his startup is worth like $10 million pre-revenue, right? And I've seen a bit of unrealistic, valuation of startups that hasn't proven anything. And you have to put yourself in a situation that this time of a little bit out of reality will eventually come to an end, and you have to be like humble enough to prove yourself before asking to multiples of revenues that you actually don't yet have. That's how I see startups evaluating themselves, which is fine if you are in gene space, but if you are like a post-seed or like a pre-series A, it just becomes unsustainable.
Matteo, thanks a lot. I have to tell you, Lelemba, Matteo, Jim, it was a huge honor to have you. You got an amazing background experience and you passed this hour with us. It's a tremendous honor. And it was a huge pleasure to moderate this panel. Raquel, back to you.
Thank you, João. It was a pleasure hearing you all today. Before closing the session, I would like to invite Esselina, the current CEO of SCD, to share her point of view on what was discussed here today and the importance of organizations like FSDMoç for the growth of these ecosystems.
Thank you, Raquel, and thanks for all panelists this morning. I think for us, as FSD, the organization that has been since 2016, pushing the existence of fintech, seeing this kind of debate, now we're debating in terms of investment in fintech, in terms of funding fintechs, whereas some years ago we were discussing if is there fintech in our country? And today we're discussing the other level of development. It is really a great pleasure for us, and even a great pleasure because I see that one of the panelists, Matteo, was one of our panelists in 2017 when we started discussing publicly the issue of fintech. And from there, we are seeing a movement that this sector of financial industry has not stopped. And we are proud in seeing that development. And really what you want is to see some of our fintechs becoming more sustainable and also developed in order to contribute to the financial inclusion specifically, but in the end of the day, to the development of the country. So all of you are giving us a great opportunity to see the future and also to see how technology can be a key components in that work that we are doing at the FSD Mozambique. For the debate for today, beside this issue of investment and funding, I think we need to have the data and see how we can take the great opportunity in order to use properly data. I do believe that there will not any digitalization without data in a proper place. We know that via digitalization, all this what we're discussing in the fintech, there are also some challenge, and the challenge can be in terms of the infrastructure in the case of Mozambique, but that's also challenge in terms of security. But we do believe that those fintechs that are here and the data that maybe were not possible to be in that debate today are going to give a push in the development. I ending my words saying a specific word to academy, because myself, I do believe that we can have strong fintech if the academy is also giving or playing its role in terms of capacity building, in terms of preparing young people to be ready to the fourth generation of technology. So yes, we do need people that are capable, but in the end of the day, we do need also fintech that are sustainable, fintech that are affordable, and they're bringing solution to the real problem for the country. Thank you very much for the fintech solution. I hope that those fintechs that are here today, they are in the panel, were our fintechs in the first round of the sandbox within the central bank. And now, via the work that they have done, it is now a recognition in terms of regulation, the existence of the fintech, and maybe they are going to become the first fintech that are going to be licensed by the central bank, and they need this investment in terms of supporting. So thank you very much, and I wish all of you a pleasant day, and I'm looking to see in the near future all those products that were described here already using for many Mozambicans, who knows, many other people in other countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Esselina, for being with us here today. We are running out of time. I would like to give space to the speakers for their final notes. If anyone wants to comment anything. Or any questions from the audience also?
I would like to encourage the entrepreneurs to stay in the game. Okay, I know that it is a road that is bumpy, and every day you're figuring out how to solve a challenge. But the more you stay in the game, the more you learn, and the bigger the opportunities that are coming about. Right now, because of what happened with the pandemic, the markets are really open, and you've got access to investors that you might not have typically had access to. So it opens up a really big opportunity for you to, inbox even an investor on LinkedIn, it's a lot more open than it used to be, where you would have to fly to Silicon Valley or go to Washington, D.C. to meet investors. So stay in the game, and all the best.
Thank you, Lelemba. I think that's always a great encouragement for everyone here. And if there aren't any more comments, I would just like to finish by mentioning a bit the work of the organizers of this event. Fintech Solutions is Portugal Fintech's new area, focused on closing the gap between mature players and fintechs. The team supports organizations to identify internal challenges or objectives that can be solved with existing startups by facilitating access to them. Our mission is really to accelerate the creation of the financial services of the future. And the Fintech House is the physical space founded by Portugal Fintech in Lisbon, Portugal, and was born to converge in a single location all the players necessary to create an international hub for technological innovation in the financial industry. And finally, thank you, financial sector Deepening Mozambique, FSD, which is a financial sector development institution with a focus on broadening levels of inclusion. It was a pleasure being here today with all of you. Thank you to the founders, investors, entrepreneurs for being here today. It was a pleasure and an honor. And thank you, Esselina and FSD, for empowering this ecosystem. And we will share the recording of this session as soon as possible. And we are looking forward for more insightful conversations. Thank you for joining and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.